came when he was 37 years old, making him at the time the oldest champion in the event history. He also excelled at Olympic distance racing, winning the very first ITU World Championship in Avignon, France in 1989 by more than a minute. Between 1998 and 1990, Mark put together a winning streak of 20 races, a feat that has not been equaled since. He was named Triathlete of the Year 6 times by Triathlon magazine, and in 1997, Outside Magazine dubbed him the world's fittest man. He's a member of both the Ironman and the Triathlete Magazine Halls of Fame, and we inducted him into the USAT Hall of Fame in 2011. And we have a short video of Mark that we want to show now. Please join me in a very warm welcome for our keynote speaker, Mark Allen.
Good evening, USAT. It's an honor to be here tonight to speak in front of so many incredible athletes. Each of you is here because you have achieved such amazing levels of success in the various aspects of the sport of triathlon that you're involved with, whether it's racing or other areas of it. In that video, you saw what defines success at the Ironman. One day, one race, and certainly only one champion. If I could swim 2.4 miles in the open ocean in Kona in about 50 minutes, get out of the water, bike 112 miles, averaging 25 miles an hour the entire way, which is, the speed limit on most residential streets here in the U.S. Get off my bike at 12:30 in the afternoon, about the hottest point of the day on the hottest of all the Hawaiian Islands, the Big Island, run a marathon averaging 6 minutes and 10 seconds every single mile, I would be the Ironman champ. You guys ready to sign up for that one? Anything less than that and somebody else was going to walk away with the title. I'm probably most famous for my 1989 victory, which was my first Ironman championship. It was an incredible race against an amazing competitor named Dave Scott. And I had been to the Ironman 6 years prior to that. 6 times I had been close to winning, but I could never hold it to the finish line. I'd finished second twice, I'd finished third once, I'd finished fifth twice. But going into my 7th Ironman, Dave Scott had 6 victories and I had 0. He was by far the favorite that year. And I went into that race with a little different mindset. Instead of trying to win, I just thought, let me just see if I can have my best race. Because I knew that, I had walked the marathon, and pretty much every one of those other Ironmans, walking the marathon was not my best race. So I figured maybe I don't have what it takes to be the champion. I'm going to stick with this guy and just follow him. He knows how to pace this thing. Why not learn from the best? And we ended up swimming together. We biked 112 miles together. We ran the marathon side by side until we hit the last final uphill into the town of Kona, which is about mile 24 and a half in the marathon. And at the bottom of that hill was an aid station, and conventional wisdom said at the bottom of the hill, on that last long stretch up, the last feature where one of us was going to possibly break the other one, you grab one last glass of something important, you slug it down, and then you take off. And Dave had gotten to the inside track of that aid station before I did, and so he reached over, and just as he reached over to grab his glass, I started to come in behind him to grab one last glass of Gatorade or whatever I was drinking, and something just said, go. And it was like I was shot out of a cannon. I pulled my hand back, and I started to go, which, you know, conventional wisdom says you need that last little bit of gas in the tank for that last mile and a half. I pulled my hand back, I took off, and in the 3 or 4 seconds it took Dave to reach over, grab that glass, and look back, I had gapped him by about 5 or 6 feet. And you can see it in the video. All of a sudden, the guy who was the best in hours 6 to 8 of that race was seeing somebody pull away from him. And his shoulders came up, and he started to rock back and forth. And, you know, I'm telling this story because it turned out great for me. I got to the top of the hill before Dave. I had to get down the other side of Pawnee Road because Dave is an excellent downhill runner, and I had to get to the bottom of the hill before him. And when I got to the bottom of the hill, I turned around, I looked back, and I couldn't see him. And then I knew without a doubt there was nothing that was going to happen, and that first victory was going to be mine. It was an incredible race. It only happened because 2 of us were together pushing each other to a limit that neither of us really was aware that we could go to. And it really set the stage for racing at Ironman. Prior to that, people kind of thought, well, you know, the winner's going to be the one who slows down the least. And after that, we realized, no, we have to race that race. And last year was actually the 25th anniversary of that incredible event that we did together. And we were both in Kona, and we did a lot of interviews together and talks together. And somebody at one point asked us, they said, do you know how far back 3rd place was? And we looked at each other, and we had no idea. We had absolutely no idea. And they said 3rd place was over 3 miles behind you guys. And it just showed that we were in this amazing magic bubble that happened because the 2 of us were at our best on the same day. Dave had his best Ironman that year. He broke his previous world's record by about 17 minutes. I did my best time to that date by over 30. And the difference in our times at the end was a mere 58 seconds. Very small difference on a very long day. And that is a great story. It's an amazing race. But the greatest victories can't be seen. You know, the ones where not only are we overcoming our competitors, but we're overcoming ourselves. And so the story that I really want to tell tonight is the story of my final victory, which was in 1995, because that ultimately, for me, meant the most, and it took the most to win, and it really was, in my opinion, my best performance out there on any course in triathlon in 15 years that I raced. In 1995, I had won the Ironman 5 times, from 1989 through 1993. In 1994, I took the year off of Ironman racing because we had the birth of our son that year, and I wanted to just back away from that long-distance commitment to have a little more time to figure out what that meant to be a father. Also, I was burned out. Has anybody ever been burned out here in this room? Ah, 2 of you. Okay. I knew that no matter how much desire I had to go back and have another great race there, that my body couldn't take it. And so I did shorter distance races that year. And then finally in 1995, I was charged up. I was ready to come back and give it one more shot. And, you know, each year when we launch into our season, you know, it's very important to reflect on what is it that's motivating me to go back this year. Why do I want to do this? Why am I going to show up every day for swim, bike, run? Why am I going to go to the office every day? You know, why does this have meaning for me? And the obvious thing on the outside was that at that point in my career, I had won 5 Ironman titles. Dave, during his career, had won 6. You know, if I could come back and win one more, I would tie the record that represented the best our sport had to offer. But that, you know, winning doesn't necessarily come dripping with meaning. And it was a great idea, but ultimately the thing that really motivated me to come back was that I felt like I had one more level of something that I could bring into that race that I had never done before. And that this was the year to do it, and no matter how it turned out, that was what my goal was, to bring the best of what I could into the Ironman Triathlon in Hawaii. And the problem was that I was 37 years old, which isn't really a problem. I love being 37 now that I'm 57. But nobody had won the race as a 37-year-old at that point in time. Nobody had won 6 Ironman titles in 6 starts. Dave won 6, but there were a couple races where he didn't win it there. And so going into the event, I had 2 levels of impossibility facing me. There was, you know, I couldn't Google, how do you win the Ironman at age 37 and 6 wins and 6 starts? There was no answer. There was no template. I was going to have to be the one to hopefully discover how to do that. I knew that the young guys were 10 and 15 years younger than me, and that I could no longer train the same as the young guys that I would be competing against. They had gotten faster in that year that I had taken off. It was going to be a tough challenge, but it had meaning to try. It had meaning to me to try. And so I cut back my training. On any given day, compared to what I had done in the past, I had to cut back anywhere from 25 to 50% to have any chance of my body absorbing the benefit of that work. You know, more work is not necessarily better. It has to be the right kind of work and the right focus. And so that's what I did. I just backed things down a little bit. I still did my key sessions, but my overall volume was really reduced. And I was starting to feel good. In June of 1995, I had a test Ironman. It was Ironman Japan. And it was the first Ironman distance race I'd done in almost 2 years. So I wanted to see, am I on track for what I'm hoping to do in Kona in October? I won the race, which was great. The time wasn't spectacular. It was about 8.5 hours, which today would blow my mind if I did 8.5 hours. But, you know, that wasn't necessarily world class, but I felt like, yeah, I am on track. I'm on track here. I'm doing the right kind of stuff as a 37-year-old trying to win this 6th title. 2 weeks later was Ironman Germany, and all the young guys 10 and 15 years younger than me were at that event. The winning time in Germany was almost 20 minutes faster than I had just gone 2 weeks earlier in Japan. If I'd been in the race with those young guys, when the leader came across the finish line, I would have had 3 miles to go in my marathon. And suddenly it just felt like, it's not worth it. Why do I want to spend the next 3 or 4 months just killing myself to go to Kona and get 5th or 10th or 50th or, I don't know, maybe I won't even finish the crazy thing. Well, fortunately, a couple weeks after that, I had a retreat planned where I was going to focus on working on that internal environment that's so important to get in the right kind of place when you are racing at a top level. You know, everybody who's going to be out there this weekend racing, they're fit. Make no mistake about it. They are fit, but when the gun goes off, who do you have to deal with? Yourself. Yeah, that is a very important part of my preparation. I had a retreat plan with Brant Secunda, who's a gentleman who had helped me to develop that sort of quieter mindset so that, you know, in an Ironman, there are 1,000 moments where you want to quit, where you're doubting yourself, where maybe somebody's farther ahead than you'd hope they would be, where, you know, your legs are killing you and you just don't know if you can keep going. And then that little voice can go off in your head. Have you ever had that little voice telling you things that isn't helping you out? That is not a champion's mindset. A champion's mindset becomes quiet. Self-confidence is not housed in a thought. It is found in silence. Stop thinking and you'll find it. When we are confident, we don't worry about being confident because we just are confident. When we are confident, our mind is quiet and we are fully engaged in this effort that we are putting forth on the day. And it doesn't matter whether we're ahead or behind, we're right there, aren't we? And that's what I worked on for 8 days to try and get, because I knew in Kona, the young guys, they could go faster than me, but they were going to have to spend maybe a minute or 2 minutes or 5 minutes getting back to that champion's mindset when that little voice went off, I was hoping to do it in one breath. That was going to be my secret. But I did everything I possibly could that year. I found a new lacing system that saved me 10 seconds in transition from bike to run. You know, small difference, but hey, it's free time. Free time's a good thing, right? In 1995, they had just developed the material that, you know, a lot of the speed suits are made out of. You know what I'm talking about. You know, all the swimmers have them in the Olympics and stuff. I called up Nike and I said, hey, can you guys make me a full body suit out of this new material? It'll save me maybe 40, 45 seconds in Kona in the swim, and that will be huge. I said, it's got to cover my upper body though, you know, because I need to cover my torso. And they go, we'll get it right out to you. Well, right out to me did not happen. The suit arrived 2 days before the race. FedEx package came and I ripped it open and I pulled the suit out, and you know the sleek styling that the Olympic swimmers have in their ski suits? Well, this thing looked like it had been dragged out of my wife's side of the closet. I was totally embarrassed to wear this thing. I went down to the swim start with my suit completely covered in warm-ups in the tropics. I waited till everybody else was warming up in the water. I waited till NBC was off filming somebody else. It was time to unveil the suit. I went to the edge of the pier to jump in the water. I threw out the tops. I yanked down the bottoms. And just as I was ready to jump in, treading water, looking up at me, looking up at my suit, was Jürgen Zach, the best cyclist in the sport in 1995. Somebody that I'd done a lot of training with. He's looking at me, shaking his head, and he just goes, mock. I don't know if it was the suit or the work that I had done with Brant or the fact that indeed I had done the right kind of training, but I came out of the water ahead of guys that I'd never beaten in my entire Ironman career before. I headed out onto the bike ride. I took the lead 15 miles into the bike, which was earlier than I had ever been in the lead before. I had a heart rate monitor on, and I knew that if I kept my heart rate at 150 beats a minute or less on the bike, then I would have the energy reserves I needed to run a very fast marathon. When I took the lead, I looked, and my heart rate was only 135 beats a minute, 15 below what I could sustain. In the lead early, low heart rate, this final Ironman victory is going to be a piece of cake. Right when I thought about how easy it was going to be, the first guy to pass me was Mr. Mock. Right behind him was a 24-year-old German soldier named Thomas Hellriegel, one of the young guys who had gone 20 minutes faster in his test Ironman in Germany than I had gone in Japan. He passed me looking like he was on a motorcycle, and I thought, I can't let these guys go. It's only 15 miles into the bike ride. But right away, as I tried to stay with him, my heart rate began to just skyrocket, 145, 150, 152. I had to let them go. I had to stick to my plan. It was risky. They would get a gap, but I thought, at most, they'll only get maybe 5 minutes on me, and that's a gap that I know that I can close. Does the real world follow your ideal plan? I came off the bike. Hellriegel was so far ahead. He'd come into transition. He was out, and I couldn't see him. I had no idea how far ahead he was, but I knew that it was much more than 5 minutes. And as I was putting on my running shoes, somebody from the crowd yelled out, "He's 13 and a half minutes ahead of you. Go catch him." I'm thinking, gee, I just saved 10 seconds. I headed out of the transition area. I was trying to just draw as much positive energy from the crowd as I could. You know, there's thousands of people cheering as you head out. And I knew that I needed to just keep my mind at bay because, you know, the slightest negative thought was probably going to derail my effort. I got to the top of the first hill, and there were 3 old ladies who were looking at me, cheering, and they go, go Mark, go Mark, go Mark, he doesn't look so good. And that thought sunk in, and about a mile later, I felt so bad. I didn't even know if I was going to be able to finish the race. Then my mind went crazy. Hellriegel, he's so far ahead, there's no way I can catch that guy. 13 and a half minutes. I've got to make up 30 seconds a mile every single mile of this marathon if I'm going to catch him at the finish line. There is no way I can do that. Hey, there's my hotel. Just Much easier, isn't it?
I've had that thought before.
If we quit, there is no chance of really realizing our dreams, is it? Is there? Even if we stay with it, if we just give up, there is no chance of realizing our dreams. But I didn't know what it was going to take. My mind was going crazy. Finally, I got myself to calm down, and then the answer came. Take it to the finish line. Just get to the finish line. I mean, in that moment, I felt like I was having the worst race of my entire Ironman career. But you will never know what kind of a race you are having until it's done and you look back at it, will you? But in that moment, I felt like this is the worst Ironman I've had in my entire career. But then I thought about it, and I thought, yeah, you know, the way I feel right now, if I could get to that finish line, that would be a victory. That would be a victory. Because I just don't know if I can even finish. And so I made that commitment. I said, no matter what, even if I have to walk every mile of this marathon, I will get there. I will be one of the finishers of the Ironman this year. And in the instant I made that commitment, Greg Welsh, who had won in 1994, the year I took off, who was 10 seconds ahead of me in 4th place, stopped in the middle of the road. He stretched his back. I passed him, and suddenly it felt like the whole world of opportunity began to open back up. I went from 5th to 4th, and then into 3rd, and finally at about the half marathon point, I passed Jürgen Zach to move into 2nd place. Now there is only one guy standing between me and the realization of that dream to win a 6th Ironman title. But he was so far ahead, I could not see him. Now, this was a huge risk to go back in 1995. You see, if I could win it, certainly I would go down as one of the best in our sport. However, if I didn't win, I would not be remembered as Mark Allen, the 5-time Ironman champ. I would be remembered as Mark Allen, the old guy who came back for one too many. That was a huge risk. A 13.5-minute gap, nobody had closed that. Now I had 3 levels of impossibility facing me, things that nobody had ever done before. But impossible is just a great victory taking shape, isn't it? It's just an opportunity. I was closing in. Mile 13, 12 to go, 11 to go, 9 to go, 8 to go. With 8 miles to go, I got a time split, and I was told that I was 4 minutes behind Hal Riegel. Let me do the math for you. 8 miles to go with a 4-minute gap. I was making up 30 seconds a mile, but I was still only on pace to catch him at the finish line. And that is not a good place to catch a guy who's 13 years younger than you when you're sprinting for the World Championship. I needed something else, but I could not find it. And then my mind went crazy again. Hal Riegel, he's so far ahead, I still can't see the guy. He's 13 years younger than me. There's no way I can beat him. I shouldn't have come back for this one again. What am I doing out here? And then I uttered those 2 words that can help each and every one of you out of the toughest moments in your life. Shut up. I took that breath, that one breath that I knew I needed to take. And there it was. The answer came. Give it 100% of what you have to give. And at first I thought, give 100% I am. I mean, my legs are killing me and I've made up all this time. And then I realized, wait a minute. I'm not giving 100%. I'm holding back just a little bit. You see, I was waiting for some imaginary billboard to pop out of the lava that said, Mark Allen, if you give 100% of what you have to give, I guarantee you're going to win this race. And those guarantees do not exist in the real world, do they? The real world begs us to give everything we have to stay fully engaged, no matter how impossible the realization of our dreams are, looking to us in those tough moments. And so I drew all my attention away from Hal Riegel, and I said, Big Island, help me here. No matter what, I'm going to give it everything I have. Even if I come in an inch behind Hal Riegel, even if I completely blow up out here, I'm going to give it everything I have, but I need that little bit extra. The next mile, I made up 40 seconds on Thomas Hal Riegel. The one after that, a little over 50. The one after that, I made up 1 minute and 15 seconds on the guy who had been leading for over 6.5 hours. Finally, at mile 23, I came up behind him, I rested, and then I made the final pass in my Ironman career and went on to win that 6th and final title. The difference in our times at the end was about 2.5 minutes. And if you figure that as a total amount of the time that we as a percent of the total amount of time we raced each other, the difference in our times was less than 1/2 of 1%. A very small difference on a very long day. Like I said, the greatest victories cannot be seen. The ABC cameras, the NBC cameras could never show the number of times where I was ready to give up. They never saw when I was ready to go into my hotel and just call it a day. But somehow I found that one extra reason to keep going, and it's because I had sat with myself and said, why is this important? It's important to give everything I have, even if it doesn't come out as a victory. And ultimately, that's what happened. It was an impossible victory, but impossible is really just a solution that has yet to present itself. And I stuck with it until that final solution came. Those of you racing this weekend, you know, you have shown that you can be at the top, but why are you going out there this weekend? What are you hoping to get out of it? What are you hoping to give back by being out there? That race had inspired a whole other generation of people to get into the sport that, you know, they still come up and say, hey, I saw you in that race in '95, and that's why I'm in the sport now. You never know the things that each of you are doing out there that are inspiring people who would have never dreamed to challenge themselves, to rise up above their laziness or their patterns that have held them back for years, and to just try to do something a little bit better. Thank you, good luck, and it's an honor to be speaking here tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that wonderful speech. That was great.
Solid.
Now I'd like to invite Barry Siff to come up, and we have a special presentation that Barry's going to help us with.